Good day, all virtual viewers. What a new world we're in. I'm Lenore Kerrigan. I am the Country Sales Director for UiPath for Southern Africa. And I believe today we have primarily a financial and accounting audience, very much an audience to my own heart. I too am an accountant, but have been in the IT sector ever since actually qualifying. So I am actually going to be sharing a little bit of my own story with you today. But let me tell you a little bit of what I'd like to cover in this session. And thank you so much for joining us. I hope you find it worthwhile. And also the presentation will be made available. So first of all, I'm going to have a look at the finance and accounting market evolution. And oh boy, have I seen an evolution in my, should I say, 3.5 decades since I qualified. So that gives my age away. And then I'm wanting to take you down the path of why the hype about automation. Why is there so much discussion around automation? Introduce you to RPA or robotic automation if you've not come across it already. But then also to talk about how that already has evolved and how we're talking about hyper automation globally at the moment. As a result of this, it's fundamentally changing the way we work. And we were talking a while ago about moving into automation is a mindset change. Well, if one thing changed our mindset, it was COVID. COVID has proven to so many of us how quickly we can, and in fact, actually have to change. So it's time to automate, whether we like it or not. And then the next step is, what do we automate? Well, in fact, we should be looking at automating everything that can be automated. But to do that, there's a massive skill shift required. And how do we do that? How do we change our skills? How do we move our current skills? And how do we bring up the new skills? So those are the areas that I'm going to cover in the next 30 minutes. And I hope you'll have some takeaways from this session. So I'd like to start off where I walk down memory lane, a little bit of my own story and what I've seen has happened from finance and accounting from an evolution perspective. So here we go. When I was doing articles in my final year of articles, this is how I was still doing consolidations on 14 column analysis paper. The youngsters watching this, you're absolutely welcome to laugh. It does sound ludicrous. We used to stick these pages together and then put in the debits and the credits. And then we used to have a little lady come along with a machine called a comptometer. She was a comptometer operator, and her job was to take this document and add up all the columns and give us a final tally. Believe it or not, that was in my lifetime. Well, what happened next? The next thing is a spreadsheet was invented, and I was able to go on a spreadsheet course. And yes, it was VisiCalc on none other than an Apple IIe. And this was completely unbeknown why an ordinary person just working in a clerical type of environment would actually start working with their own computer. And the concept was put forward by Bill Gates that one day everybody would have their own computer. And that seemed bizarre because, you know, why on earth would you want your own computer? Well, I guess it does sound a bit odd today, especially again to the youngsters. The next big move was the mobile phone. This was the first analog phone. And this was fantastic. I got this phone in 1989. And the reason I remember it's when I had my son. And I actually checked into the nursing home with this phone. And people thought I was crazy. They thought, why on earth would you go to the hospital with a phone? Well, I guess we all know if we leave home today without a phone, we actually make a U-turn, we go back home, and we go and fetch our phone. And now our working environment is very much like this. And look what has happened with COVID. Here I am sitting in my home environment with my laptop, with my cell phone, with my iPad, and I'm able to communicate and do business with anybody, anywhere in the world. And this, everyone, is purely in my lifetime, in my working environment, having qualified as an accountant. So let's have a look at what's happening now with the next evolution. The finance and accounting environment has been dramatically affected by spreadsheets. And I think if you ask any accountant today, or say to any accountant, I'm going to take away your spreadsheet, you will get a revolution or a revolt or a walkout, because we simply cannot operate without that productivity tool that has enabled us to do calculations very quickly and in fact, to automate them. But the next phase of automation, next evolution of technology is now starting to hit us in a big way. This slide, you can look at the details for yourself. It is very much Northern Hemisphere based, and you'll see the numbers are looking at particularly sort of, they say globally, but a lot of the stats is based on US, Asia Pac, or Europe. But the average impact is very much in the sort of 45 mark. But having a look at what is impacted is that physical, predictable data collection, data processing type of activity. It makes no sense for highly qualified people to be doing that kind of work, when in fact we should be doing the creative, innovative, and analytical type of work. So this is really why automation is taking on the next step of impacting finance and accounting. Now, this is a busy slide. There's a lot on the slide, but I think it's very important to have a look at what has been very recently assessed by the World Economic Forum. This report came out in October during our COVID times. And on page 66, you can download the report yourself. You will find there's an assessment specifically on South Africa. And there are some very interesting points that are raised here. And if you have a look at the impact of COVID on company strategy, the very first one in the top left-hand column, they talk about accelerating automation of tasks. So this has been a huge shift. We're looking at 75% of companies building into their strategy task automation across their enterprise. And if you look a little bit further down, responses to the shifting of skills, because again, we learned very much in my day, in the spreadsheet day, I would never been able to move into the spreadsheet computer type of mindset if I didn't shift my skills and go on some training and learn what a spreadsheet was and how to do formulae. The same thing is going to happen and is happening with automation right now. So if we look at the shifting skills, the highest one there at 82% is look to automate work. And so it's building skills within an organization on how to automate work. And interestingly enough, it's really in the finance and admin space that we're seeing the biggest impact taking place right now on automation, because that is quite typically the area where you have voluminous amounts of work, which is very much rules-based, that can be automated very easily. I think the scary one for anyone in the job market right now is the one on the right-hand side. The blue table at the top is looking at the emerging jobs, and the brown table at the bottom is looking at the redundant jobs. So if we look at the very top, which is some of the most sought after emerging jobs, it's looking at process automation specialists. Now, because accountants generally and anyone in an administrative type of role is very good on process, to move into process automation is a natural shift in building skills. But if you stay in the manual mode, like I could have with my manual piece of paper, you're going to find yourselves in trouble. Because if you look down on the brown table, the very first area of jobs that's looking at becoming redundant is accounting, bookkeeping, and payroll type clerks. And if you look at number 10, it's accountants and auditors. And certainly in my day as qualifying, being an accountant and auditor was an extremely prestigious job. Yes, it's still a prestigious job, but the fundamental job and how that job operates has shifted dramatically. And I'll share a little bit more with you on that. But I think it's important to see what the analysts are seeing, the impact of finance and accounting. Oops. If we have a look now, first of all, what is robotic process automation? Now, this is the first step in looking at automation. And all it is, it's not about some fancy little machine walking into your office like R2-D2 and taking over. It is simply software in your environment to make your work so much easier for you. And that's your little friendly robots, as you see in the top right-hand corner, very much like the spreadsheet really revolutionized accounting. So the ideal candidates to look for in processes in order to automate and provide a robotic process automation strategy to those are typically where you have repetitive tasks, and also where you've got tasks that go across multiple functions or business areas, going into many systems, and that is also typical in finance and accounting. So you'll have, for example, an ERP system like an SAP or an Oracle, and then you'll also have a CRM system like a Salesforce.com, and an HR system like a Workday or something like that, and then you'll have some kind of reporting tool. All of this you've got to integrate into, for example, your office environment, like taking that data, putting it into some kind of spreadsheet, and then cutting out of that and putting it in a PowerPoint, and from there putting it in an email and sending it off to the boss. And we do that every day. I mean, that's crazy, right? So it would be so much easier to have that being done as an automated process for you. So effectively, this software or this robotic process automation becomes, it acts as your hands and your feet and your eyes, but definitely not the brain. What it does is it frees up all that time of us just doing stuff to rather be thinking about what we're doing and how we can actually apply better thoughts and ideas, controls, manage risk, all those kind of things, look at growth opportunities for the business as opposed to just doing things. So it's really a lot more about humans being as opposed to humans doing, because all of this technology that we now have on our laptops today, all it is we land up moving around from system to system, to window, and I don't know if you experience what I do, but at the end of the day, when I shut down my laptop, I've got to close down something like 20 different windows. And I realized all I've done is gone into these 20 different systems during the day. It would be so much easier to have an automated process that does it for me. And the one at the bottom, to me, is the most important one. And that is having your personal robot or your organizational automated process to go and do things that's humanly impossible to do. So, for example, I say to a CFO, if I could give you 10 people tomorrow that could walk into your organization with all the skill set that they need, that can work 24/7, what fundamental different thing would you do in your business? That is now a completely different mindset on what automation can do in organization. Because we as humans, there's only so much that we can do within the hours in the day and our concentration levels. So that's what RPA is. So that's a piece in the middle. But at the end of last year, Gartner came out with the top 2020 trends. And the number one trend that Gartner put forward was hyper-automation. And this is now about, instead of just taking a single process, a spot pain point, and automating that to make sure that it runs quicker, smoother, without error, that kind of thing. It's now looking at a strategy in an organization, and you saw from the figures in the earlier World Economic Forum analysis, it's building a strategy across an entire enterprise to automate everything that possibly can be automated. Now, to achieve that, it means bringing in a number of these other areas and integrating into multiple systems, your analytics. And we've had artificial intelligence around for a long time, but it's had limited use without being able to build it into your organizational processes. And this is really what hyper-automation is all about. Now, I'm going to share with you a slide specifically from Gartner, which is the Gartner hyper-automation flywheel, if you will. And none of this would be a surprise to anyone in this audience, I'm quite sure. But it's about how you actually take this thinking of the way we've traditionally been looking at processes, bringing together the various technology tools, running it through the flywheel, and automating as much as we possibly can automate in the organization to free up our human resources, or if you will, our brain's trust, to be able to drive the business. And you can see by some of the quotes on the right-hand side, the amount of impact this is expected to have on organizations going forward. So yes, you need to first of all go and discover what are the processes in your organization that could be automated. Because the first thing I need to say is we can't take a hammer to every problem. because we know that won't work. So it's first of all identifying what processes are, and then analyzing whether they are good candidates for automation. Once you have that, you then design those in the best possible way, because the way we might be doing it on our keyboards as humans might not be the best way, because we're creatures of habit, right? We'll just do it the way we know how to do it. Once we understand the best way to do it, we then actually automate those processes. Important thing is to measure them. Are you getting the outcomes or exceeding the outcomes of what you expected from the automation? Reassess what you're automating. Have a look again at what you should be automating in the organization, and so you go through the flywheel. Now, to meet this methodology, UiPath, which is the organization that I come from, which is, by the way, the fastest growing enterprise software company in history. And I've been in the IT industry literally since I left auditing. It's been quite a phenomenal growth. And the reason for that is we've put together the platform over the last 15 years that supports this automation drive across the entire enterprise. So if you have a look and you overlay that the platform onto the flywheel you saw before, there's a number of technologies that enable an organization, first of all, to discover the processes that are good candidates for automation, and then to quickly build those automations and to manage them. And what I mean by manage is, what you're doing is you're effectively bringing digital workers into your organization that are going to do the real grunt work that we as humans don't want to do. So you wouldn't take in a new employee into your organization without giving them KPIs, without giving them all the right access controls, without giving them a manager, all those kind of things. So that's exactly the same thing that you would have within this kind of environment. You have an environment to manage these automated processes and make sure that they're achieving everything they were set out to do in a managed and a secure way, and constantly being utilized. You also don't want people sitting having coffee breaks and for all day and having chit chats. Likewise, you want to make sure that your processes your robots are fully utilized on maximum processes at all times. And then the run part are the actual, what we call the robots. It's a fun way to think about these processes. And that's your automations. And they can either be attended robots or unattended robots. And what I mean by that is very simple. Your unattended robots are processes that run automatically in the background. They typically run on your back office systems. Your manager layer actually sets them off. So, for example, you could have a process of number of supplier invoices coming into an Outlook inbox with invoices attached. You've got these emails with invoices attached, and typically a human would go into some kind of inbox in the morning when they come in, open that up, look for supplier emails that have come in, go and open up those attachments, and then go and capture those attachments, those invoices, into some sort of ERP system like an SAP, for example. Now, that uses up a huge amount of time. You would much rather that person being analyzing and checking pricing and doing all that kind of stuff. So why not have your automated processes in the back end actually do that during the night and go and check all of those inboxes? So it runs through all those invoices that have come through. If there are no questions, just process them. But when the human comes in the morning, rather than let them deal with the exceptions. Let me show you that in real life on a video a little bit later. So think about that. And then your attended environment is where you would have a process on your laptop, which is an example that I kind of gave earlier, where you might go into an ERP system, run a report, extract it, put it into Excel, run some graphs, cut and paste it into PowerPoint, take that, email it to the boss. And you do that every day. Crazy, right? Rather, just have an automated process, come in the morning, click a button, let it run, and you can check it if you like before it emails. That kind of situation. And an engaged situation is where you engage with the process. So as I explained earlier, where I might have to come in and just check some things before they finally get emailed, etc. So you're now starting a joint engagement between the processes and the humans, and finally to measure them. Now, to enable all of this, there are a number of things that we talk about on the right-hand side. One of the most important things are our partners, like Tangent Solutions, who thank you very much for the opportunity to do this webinar jointly with you. Tangent Solutions are gold partners of UiPath, and they are experts in helping customers go down this journey and transition into this automation strategy. We also have extensive training, which I'll cover a little bit later. So where is the impact of automation? The impact of automation is in multiple areas of any enterprise. And typically they will fall into one of each of these four categories, or you'll find many automations actually cover two or even three of these. But the impact is typically in employee engagement, customer experience, looking at risk and compliance, which we know is an absolutely critical area in our environment right now. And the one which is most important as we come out of this very tough year of 2020, every organization is looking at where is the growth opportunity and how do we drive operational efficiencies. And I think that is the one where we're seeing the stats that came out of that World Economic Forum report. So there are some examples below of customers of ours that have had some great success, particularly in this time frame. But the employee engagement one is interesting. A very large online retailer, when COVID hit and people were now suddenly working from home and shifted to online purchasing, they had to hire 100,000 employees in 1 month. Well, I mean, that's humanly impossible, right? But because they were on an automation drive, they were able to put automated processes in place to make this happen. Very interesting environment. Customer experience. I mean, look, if we look at things like contact centers, I feel so sorry for anyone in a contact center, because usually when a person contacts a contact center, they have a problem, so they're not in the best of moods. And your poor contact center person is trying to log into multiple systems to get the information. Yes, I see you did pay, but I don't know why it's recognized, or this problem hasn't been resolved. Those are the kind of things that automation can literally bring to the fore of a contact center agent to be able to respond and, as I say, be human and empathetic to the customer with the right data prepared and supplied to them. Risk and compliance is an interesting one, and I'll talk a little bit more on this because it's quite important to finance and admin community. And where we've seen a massive shift to automation in this space is the impact that it's had on auditing. And whether that's internal auditing or whether that's external auditing, there has been massive impact. And why you saw on the brown table earlier that if accountants and auditors don't fundamentally shift on how they're doing business, they're going to find their skills being relatively redundant. I will share 2 use cases further on in the talk. And then when we look at growth and efficiencies, this is about the art of the possible and doing things that weren't possible before. So, for example, just to give you an idea, we've got a retailer that actually acts like a virtual shopper. And you have a process that runs automatically and does virtual shopping on some sites of competitors and is able to give them information in real time on special offers and those kind of things. Again, these are things that are fundamentally impossible to do humanly. The point of this is what I want to share with you is the use cases and the opportunity for automation is broad. It impacts every business, irrespective of whether it's banking and insurance, whether it's in public sector, whether it's retail, manufacturing. We have got customers across the globe in all of those sectors utilizing automation to drive business growth and efficiency and improvement across the board. But within any business, it applies within every department. So whether it's HR, whether it's finance and accounting, whether it's supply chain, whether it's manufacturing, in every area of the business. So I think that might also explain why we find this is the fastest growing technology across the globe at the moment. It's making the biggest difference. Let's hone in though specifically on finance and accounting for a moment. And this will be very familiar to this audience. So typically in a finance and accounting environment, you will find these are typically the kind of processes or divisional areas within your environment that either you work in or you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Now, each one of these can be broken down in more detail. So for purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to focus on source to pay. So within source to pay, you'll see there are about 6 sub-elements of processes within source to pay. If we analyze source to pay specifically and each of those 6 sub-elements and processes, there are a number of activities and many processes that take place within that kind of environment. Excuse me. And if we have a look at what we've got on the screen right now, the green areas are what we call highly automatable candidates. So we find that in most organizations, that's where you find your high volume, repetitive, error-prone type of processes. And those are typically the ones that are best to have a look at for automating. Now, to try and put this into a little bit of reality and to show you how this actually works, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you into a video. Now, what this video is going to do is going to show you that example I shared earlier with supplier invoices coming into an inbox in Outlook. The automated process is going to be monitoring that inbox, opening up those emails, opening up the attachments, reading the information, and posting that into an SAP environment. But what it's also doing is it's having a part of the process is what we call human in the loop, where it also needs input from the human because there might be certain things missing, because typically you will have a business rule which will determine it needs to have a purchase order or it needs to be no more than a certain value and those kind of things. So you might need the process to go to some sort of supervisor, and the supervisor can then in turn give the information to the robot. So at this point, I'm going to run this video to show you the robot working in action, but I need you to know that this has been slowed down substantially to show you how it operates, but it literally operates in a flash.
Today, we're going to be showing UiPath Action Center. UiPath Action Center helps automate long and complex processes from start to finish through seamless human-robot collaboration from a single platform. Here, we will look at a complex automation for invoice processing that requires human-robot handoff of tasks. The goal is to remove the mundane work and bring humans in the loop only when needed to make critical decisions. In this demo, we'll use UiPath Action Center to automate invoice processing where an unattended UiPath robot looks for invoices that need to be processed, extracts the required data from the invoice, processes the invoice, and finally submits it into an ERP system, in this case SAP. During this process, if the robot needs human assistance, it automatically creates a task for a human and moves on with other jobs until the human performs the required action. Here, we will look at 2 scenarios. First, an invoice backed up by a purchase order. Second, an invoice without a purchase order. Let's look at the scenario where the invoice has a PO number. The robot picks up the invoice and extracts the data including PO number, invoice date, vendor name, total amount, net amount, and tax amount. As this invoice has the PO number, the robot matches the line items in the invoice with the existing PO in the SAP system. Here, we see the robot entering the basic invoice data into SAP, followed by PO number and the invoiced amounts. This lets SAP perform matching to PO amounts and quantities. In this case, upon posting in SAP, you will notice the document is posted with a blocked for payment message due to PO invoice unit price mismatch. Immediately, the robot creates a new action for a business user to review this matching exception and to make the final approval. While the user acts on this task, the robot is free to pick up other jobs. Here, we see the task in the action inbox of UiPath Action Center. The task is in the unassigned status. The respective user can either accept this task or assign it to someone on the team. Here, we see that the user accepts the task and approves it to confirm that the higher unit price is accepted. As soon as the user approves the invoice, the next available robot gets triggered to continue the process. The robot then locates the blocked invoice in SAP and releases it for payment. In the next scenario, we see that the invoice selected doesn't have a PO number. The robot creates an action and sends it to Actions inbox for a business user to perform GL coding of this non-PO invoice. Upon seeing the task in the inbox, the user accepts the task, checks the invoice, and adds the respective GL codes for each of the line items. Then submits the task as complete. When the user acts on this task, the robot is free to pick up other jobs. Immediately, an email and a mobile notification is sent to the manager for the final approval. In this case, the manager has the UiPath mobile app installed on her mobile phone and gets a notification of a task that needs her attention. Once the manager opens the task on her mobile application, she can see the invoice details and add any comments and can either accept the task or assign it to others on the team. Now, the robot continues the process, logs into the SAP application, enters the required data from the invoice, and then updates the newly provided GL codes. Once GL codes are successfully submitted, we see the document number at the bottom of the screen. In this demo, we saw the power of UiPath Action Center, allowing humans and robots to seamlessly collaborate for automation of a complex process. The possible automations supported by bringing human into the loop are endless. Get started on your automation scaling journey today.
Reboot work!
So I hope that video helped bring it to life and give you an indication of how this actually works. And you see that there's an automated process in the background together with somebody interacting with the robot. So what is important is to have a look at the humans. And there are multiple personas who will typically work within an automated environment and will have different roles and interactions with this environment. So your business user was the person who would be opening up those tasks when they come in the morning and give the additional information that the process might need. But what we also have is now citizen developers. What we mean by citizen developers is now departmental experts who can now actually start building those automated processes themselves. Very much like when I started learning with a spreadsheet, somebody taught me how to build a consolidation on a spreadsheet. So now I do it in my sleep. And those are where we have a no-code environment. It's literally drag and drop to build those processes for them, for a department, for yourself, and to run them. Your developers are typically your IT type folks who, and yet I must tell you, there are many CAs out there who have done RPA developer certifications. My son is one of them, actually, because they literally take to it. So do engineers take to it extremely quickly. Industrial engineers who are very process oriented, who can then do the integrations into the back-end systems like you saw there, SAP. So instead of having to log in, can go directly into the SAP system. And then you have specialized developers. Those are people who typically test the environment, and you've got quality testers, and you might have process engineers who have a look at the overall end process. So these are multiple skills and roles in an organization. So as much as we're going to automate some of the tasks we're doing, we now need to take our workforce and uplift and upskill our workforce into these new roles, which quite frankly are far more interesting than sitting behind a keyboard and processing purchase orders into an ERP system or the like. So the world we're going to live in going forward is going to be a world of robots and humans working together. And you'll have on the far left-hand side where it's an engagement, it could be a design thinking type workshop, it can be a manager-employee engagement, the human-to-human interaction. On the far right-hand side, you're going to have a pure automated process running in the back end. It could be doing, I don't know, the IT backups overnight, for example. And as long as nothing goes wrong and a human doesn't need to intervene, they will just run constantly. And then you're going to have every kind of combination in between, where you're going to have a back office robot come to a human, like that example, and you're going to input, or you're going to have your own digital assistant on your laptop where you can run like that reporting and email example I gave you on demand as and when you need it. And this is going to be the way we work, very much like we work today with a spreadsheet. I might be working with something and I need to do a financial financial calculation. I literally pull up my spreadsheet, I put in the numbers, add in the formula, I get the spreadsheet, and I've got it done. I don't even think about it. And that's exactly how it's going to work. So as we move into that mode, like it seemed so crazy that everybody would have their own computer and everybody would have their own phone, which they would carry around with them. Only 30 years ago, that seemed strange, whereas now it's absolutely expected. You take your laptop phone with you wherever you go. You will now also have your own robot on your laptop, which you'll be giving tasks and teaching it on how to do certain tasks to make your life so much easier. And this is really where it's moved very, very quickly from an automation perspective across the globe. But this is not futuristic. This is happening right now. So again, because I have a finance and accounting audience, let me share with you PwC, very well-known name to anyone in finance and accounting. Many of you will have done articles with PwC. PwC now issue all article clerks with their own desktop robot. And they get KPIs that a certain percentage of their audit work must go through the robot, for example. And even in Africa, PwC have trained over 9,000 people across Africa on how to use UiPath and how to automate the activities that they're doing. I mean, the one I love they have on the desktop is timesheets. I don't know, anyone who's in the audience who's done auditing, timesheets is always the nightmare. Let your robot do it. So that gives you an idea, again, how the finance and accounting world is shifting. Another example is another very big global accounting organization, known very well to many people. What they've done now is they've used our discovery environment, which we have in order to be able to discover processes and to be able to then identify which ones need to be automated. They are using this tool, which is process mining, to be able to look at audit transactions and identify the outlier transactions. It's moving away from sampling, where in my day there were various sampling techniques, and we used to audit just a number of transactions within a certain materiality limit, which when you think about it, it's never going to find what's happening in today's environment, and hence why we've seen so many frauds and horrible stories. What's happening now is you're moving to a situation where you're able to do perpetual auditing on all transactions. So think about that. You can monitor and check every transaction all the time. And that is a massive shift, and obviously reducing the areas of fraud and all those kind of areas, and also making sure that internal controls are adhered to in many areas. So this has been another big shift that we've seen in the industry. But that shift obviously needs a shift in skills. And how does one go about getting these skills? Well, first of all, please note the link below. Just go to our website and click on our academy. Our academy is free to everyone across the globe. It's one of the most amazing academies I've seen. And there's on-demand courses, there's role-based courses, there's specific training that you can do on certain products like process mining, for example. And you can also go and access through the community, our community edition, to start playing with the technology and start building a process yourself to be able to, I don't know, reconcile your own credit card account or whatever the case may be. The best way to get into this, right, is to do it. The Academy is completely free. So go and start today. Certainly recommend having a look at Studio X, which is the no-code automation environment. And the best way to do that is, if you go into the Academy, please go and search for RPA in finance and accounting. There's a module specifically for finance and accounting. It's a 4-hour module, no charge whatsoever. And you will be able to, after that, build some of your own basic processes and literally get you into this fray and start building your skills. And you get a diploma of completion, which you can add to your CV. So in a nutshell, if you hate it, automate it. And I can assure you, one of the reasons why I got out of auditing so quickly is because I hated the work. It was so mundane. It was so repetitive. It seemed so meaningless to me. I even remember actually adding up a mainframe printout. How bizarre does that sound? So we have to automate. And this is really where, if I haven't convinced you by now, this is where the market's going. Please go and read up more on it, and certainly go and enhance your skills. So it's been an absolute pleasure being with you today. I hope you've had some further thoughts around where automation is going, and given you some ideas on how to enhance your skills. And go out there and start your first automation. I look forward to hearing from you. If you would like to reach out and make contact with myself, there is my email address. And I hope you have some fun with your robots. And by the way, most customers name their robots. So I'm very interested to hear the names of your robots. Looking forward to hearing from you. And keep well, stay safe. All the best. Lenore Kerrigan, UiPath Country Sales Director.